Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the Floral Arrangement event, in which the Lady Florella is added to the game. So this week is the final week for the current campaign, so if you end up buying it or just want to go and finish it out, get all those precious purple deed books, definitely make sure to do so, as this is the final week to end up completing it. But that being said, it is also the end of the month, which means, of course, we have the event calendar for the entirety of next month of April. So the biggest things that we have going on are honestly quite a few. Almost every single week has something pretty big going on. The most noteworthy thing to mention immediately, of course, is the double Vault weekend. So we have one this weekend upcoming, as well as on the Easter weekend. Aside from that, we will be having a new pet for the Easter pet on that Wednesday, as well as a week-long little extra reward thing that you can end up getting. I believe this is one of the ones that you can get just basically by doing your dailies, by like killing like 300 greens or something similar. So a pretty free one to go and end up getting. We don't have like an actual like specific out of the way Easter event. It's one that's pretty much going to get done automatically. So just taking that pet on Wednesday is going to be the most noteworthy one. And whatever that weekly objective is, you could easily get done automatically just by doing the Vault event itself. Beyond that, on the 28th, we are going to be getting a Legends Reborn for Whitehelm. So we're going to be getting a complete rework to that, and given what we're getting for our next Guild War all the way at the beginning of May for Divining Fields, Divining Fields of course was the previous one that they ended up reworking. This is slightly bad because I'm not sure if the legend will be in drop table by then, the centaur that gives 50% mana start to everything. I don't sure if it's in drop table right now. I don't believe it is, but hopefully it will be before this Guild War ends up starting, because that's going to be a little bit problematic. Otherwise, it is the $7 money-locked legendary that is really useful for the event, since most of Divining Fields is a 50% mana start to centaurs, and most of Divining Fields is centaur. But beyond that, given that they did this so close to the event, it makes me think that one of the upcoming Whitehelm restrictions, or one of the upcoming Guild War restrictions, might end up being Whitehelm, since we're ended up getting a rework to it. Whitehelm used to be pretty good back in the day. Lady Sapphira used to be the best one-shotting troop for true damage, and Paladin used to be the best one-shotting troop for physical damage. But these days, Whitehelm has kind of fallen off quite a bit. It has a few good utility troops here and there, but doesn't get used too much, so I'm curious to see what an overall rework will end up doing to it ultimately when it ends up coming at the end of this month. But beyond that, yeah, those are the main two things. Double Vault event and everything going on for Easter. There is one other pretty big thing though, which of course we'll be going over on Friday when we end up getting it. But of course we are getting a new Mythic this Friday. And this new Mythic, I did end up taking a peek at it, and I'm glad I did. I haven't really been checking the new spoiler thread thingies lately, mostly because it's text-based and everything. However, there is something really strong about it. Like, you look at its mana cost, its ability, it's like, oh yeah, it's average, it's average. You look at its first two traits, yeah, not too bad. It has something really good. One very specific thing that actually probably makes it one of the top 10 troops in the entire game, especially with the new Flower Dragon, as this thing is a dragon, so it does have dragon synergy with it. But Faerie fire all enemies, all four of them, every single one, all four, when taking an extra turn. That is really absurdly good. One of the biggest issues with Faerie fires, and one of the reasons why Queen Titania for the longest time has pretty much been the best Faerie fire option up to this point, is it was a really good amount of damage relative to being able to apply Faerie fire. But every other Faerie fire that we had either has to cast and just gets up too slowly, or ends up having, you know, a better extra turn, like let's say Faerie fire and freeze, but it comes at the caveat of having a worse ability. This thing has a pretty comparable ability damage-wise to something like Queen Titania, while also having 4 times guaranteed Faerie fire. This changes up how you could use Faerie fire quite a bit. While there are ways to apply 4 times Faerie fire right now, like that one green-blue dragon that has always existed within the kingdom, it had to be casted. It wasn't one that would just automatically apply to the enemy team. But for one single extra turn to 4 times Faerie fire, which of course is 50% extra spell damage, this is actually enough with the new Flower Dragon. If you have basically max magic, or actually max magic, you know, anything like really high, and only missing like a few magic or so, you should be able to one-shot with this new troop Explore 12. This is something that's never been possible. Obviously one-shotting stuff in Explore 12, but it's never been possible to 4 times one-shot in Explore 12, unless you set up, obviously. Like if you had like a big setup, you probably could, or you always could. But there's never been a way to just immediately do it. All you'd have to do is just take a single extra turn, get your mana into your Flower Dragon, or even Stellaryx. And actually, would Stellaryx have enough damage now that I think about it? Stellaryx might not have enough. It might actually have to be Flower Dragon. We'll definitely test it on Friday for sure, just to see. But Flower Dragon plus this new troop that's coming out on Friday, depending on your magic level, is enough to one-shot Explore 12. As long as nothing in that Explore 12 has spell reduction or like 10-20% extra stats or anything like that, it should be able to one-shot Explore 12. So very, very, very good. And perfect time for Vault Weekend, so we get to go farm it up as well. Honestly, that might be what I do, just farm Explore 12 only. I was mentioning the other day, I'm running like so low on tokens, or, you know, those little medals and everything to go upgrade all the kingdoms. So it might be a good time to go stock up. As 4 times Faerie Fire into any really strong hitting troop, going to be used quite a lot. I can see this being used in such a wide variety of teams, and it has dragon synergy, so even any dragon restriction, you could end up applying it with, you know, any of the good dragons, if you have Stellarex, if you have the new Flower Dragon, anything like that. So, be interesting to see how that pans out in the future. But yeah, 100%, make sure to get the Mythic this Friday. You'll have a week, you have all the way until reset time on that following Friday, so basically all the way till the 10th. The end of the 10th you have, so from the 4th to the end of the 10th, all the way to 11th reset day, you have to go get that. And I highly, highly advise, if you don't have the keys to get it, or if you don't end up getting that weekend, farm the Vault event, get all the keys you need, and hopefully have it by that day, as that thing is going to be really solid. And of course, it doesn't have to be used with Stellarex or the Flower Dragon. There are plenty of other things you could use it with. Basically anything that hits all enemies simultaneously or just does a lot of spell damage in general, it will be really good with. So even just Truffle Infinite Loop, Beatrix, stuff like that. Cheaper stuff could easily get away with. You don't need to have any of the really good dragons. It's more beneficial synergy-wise, but you could end up doing it with like 50% mana start for dragons and stuff like that. But it's definitely not required to end up utilizing it, though it would be for one-shotting Explore 12. Anything else to mention? I think that's pretty much everything. And of course, we mentioned the campaign's ending, and yeah, and I'll have the link in the description if you want to go and reference all this yourself. Anyway, so, calendar, out of the way. Other things we have going on. Where should we start? Let's go with all the teams. So, of course, all the weekly teams for the week. As far as things we do have a Yellow Doom going on. So, with that being said, of course, you have a yellow restriction, and you have to use the new weapon. You can get this for 500 gems in the shop. If we go over to Guild, go over to Tower of Doom, of course, this is where the Tower of Doom event takes place. Make sure to communicate with your guild where all of the better rooms are, as it is the same across your entire guild. Not across every guild, but across your specific guild, every single room will be exactly the same. So try to find where all the unlocks are, heroism, fireball, anything else you want to report back, and then go do the better rooms. But you want to make sure you're using this weapon every single time. It costs 500 gems to go get, and it'll end up giving you double points whenever you kill the Doom. As far as this new category of weapon, we do have a new category of weapon, the crossbow-like things. This deals a bunch of damage to an enemy, +4 per temporary level, so 40 extra damage. And if they use yellow, it'll explode 3 yellow gems. My problem with this weapon is that is not enough for default mana accumulation. This needed to be at least 5, if not 8, if not, like, you know, a better number, especially since it only uses one color. Compared to other things that already do damage, this is a relatively bad category of weapon. It's not the worst category. It does have, you know, the perk in this case being silence. Obviously, the blue one would probably have, like, freeze the first enemy, stuff like that. But overall, it just does not get enough mana accumulation to really justify using this in most situations. Obviously, for the Tower of Doom event, you're going to be forced to have to use it. But I can't really see too many other situations unless there's, like, a really weird kingdom where there just is absolutely nothing else to run for a weapon. But beyond that, I really don't see outside these events where they're really going to be used. They just don't have enough follow-up. If they have a Doom, it will end up giving you a quarter of your mana back. But again, it's only a quarter. Biggest issue across this entire weapon is it just doesn't gain enough mana back. There should be at least bare minimum 5 explodes when it hits yellow. Maybe like 3 by default and like double it if you hit a yellow or something. Where it always does 3 explodes but do 6 if it does the color. Or, you know, double that. And if you Doom on the enemy team, do like half the mana back. But with how it is right now, it just is not enough. A quarter and 3 is just way, way, way too low for the fact that you're only just slightly poking an enemy, because you're barely even doing any damage. In this situation right here, if we just take these numbers, we're only hitting a 91. That is not a lot of damage this late in the game. Obviously, earlier on in the game, that could be a little bit more potent. But this late in the game, 91 damage is very, very, very low. You're talking like 3-shotting something, and that's assuming they don't have spell reduction or anything. So yeah, not ideal, but, you know, new category of weapon. Always nice to see. So we're going to have those for the next half a year or so as all the Doom events roll in. But anyways, all the teams, also in the description below if you want to go and copy-paste any of them. For the first yellow team, we are running with, of course, the Flower Dragon, using the new Flower Dragon. In this case, you could use any yellow damage source here. Obviously, I'm just using Flower Dragon because we have it, but if you don't have that, use Stellarex. If you don't have that, downgrade to whatever your next best yellow full AoE option is. We're using Kaffir here for a bunch of mana accumulation. Of course, you can go the double or even triple Takshaka route. This is yellow, so you are allowed to double, triple Takshaka. Of course, Sensia just to get a little bit of mana. And of course, if we need to go down to low rarity range, I forget if I did, but you could just Atlanta spam. Yep, I did go Atlanta spam. I was going to mention it regardless, but yeah, I did end up doing that for the low rarity team. But yeah, of course, Atlanta, ever since the Divinity Fields rework the other month, or actually was it earlier this month, whatever it was, pretty recently, when we ended up having that rework, yeah, this thing became insane. It was pretty much the only thing that gained a really big boost from Divinity Fields, which of course is a restriction soon for Guild War, all the way at the end of the month. But yeah, Era Link you already had, a little bit of dodge, but the main thing being 75% mana start. This is so good. She only needs 3 mana to go and get rolling. I believe they even lowered her mana cost by 1 as well. And having that with the link and a 75% start, it is just so strong to get off the ground and just start doing a lot of damage. And she is a mage, so if you do end up getting her elite level, that is 6 extra magic at any point in the game that you end up doing that. So definitely worth considering. Really great early mid-game kind of just wipe out things kind of category. And yeah, should work out pretty well. Using Ehe Cattle here just to get a bunch of blue to yellow convert. Also does Yellow Storm just to get a bunch of yellow mana. And of course we're using the weapon to tank with. We're just using Elementalist to make sure it tanks for our Atlantas and just keep spamming Atlantas until you win. For the most part, you don't even really need to cast your weapon. You just keep going into Atlantas and just use this as like a finishing blow or something for the most part. As far as, or if they get like resummoned. As far as the faction event, this is for Primal Rift, which is a green-purple restriction. Though, of course, you're allowed to use any color hero weapon. For the first team, we're just using Quick Kill Team Word of Rain. We don't have a good mana start with it, so we're just using Atlanta to offset our damage there. For the higher rarity team, just a pretty standard Zolgoth Catherics Quick Kill build, using Wand to get everything going, and Leprechaun to get it right off the ground. As far as the pure faction, a nice diverse team for Alderfather, except this is not actually your team. He has a summon that ends up doing either a Trent or a Green Golem, so ideally what you'd want to do on the first fight is kill your first Alderfather, have him die, and then keep casting until you get a Trent. If you get a Green Golem, kill that out as well. It'll be a little bit annoying because he has a 50% score reduction or something pretty high. But go keep killing out your first slot until you end up summoning a Trent there. And then once your team is a Trent into triple Alderfather, you just go forward with that. You can't start with your Trent, unfortunately, because it is not a Primal Rift troop. It is a Forest of Thorns troop, but it's not a Primal Rift troop. So you're not allowed to start with it, but you are allowed to end with it. So you basically just want to keep killing out your first slot, go and keep doing that until you get your Treant. And once you get this, he's one of those auto-win troops that gain a bunch of attack and durability at the same time. So you just keep stacking him up with him, gain a bunch of durability, gain a bunch of attack value. And then this guy has Skull Spam, so you just do that into him and then you're good to go. So you just go and get him boosted up, get a really high attack value, and just kill everything with your Skull Spam. So it takes a little bit of setup before you can get that going, but once you do, you just kind of clear out the entirety of it. It does have to spend quite a bit of time, like almost 10 minutes on the first battle though. But once you do, it's a pretty clean win the rest of the time for the pure faction. It's definitely worth it. To just speed up the rest of the factions, just make sure it's a lot easier to take out, especially for your lower stats. As far as the class event for this, oh yeah, I forgot. I didn't bother moving this with the restriction. Let me double check that this is correct. I believe it is Elf, because some of them look like elves, but they aren't actually elves. Yep, I knew it. I knew it. This is why I checked. I knew it. Hold. Wait. Let me get the link. Oh, I have cap lock on apparently. Wait. We gotta get an elf. Is there not an elf that has green link in it? How on earth is there no green link elf? Fine, I'll use this guy. We just need some link. There we go. I have fixed the team. They do specifically have to be elves from Forest of Thorns, not things that look like elves. Things that look like elves don't count. They have to be actual elves. But yeah, things that look like elves do not count as elves, unfortunately. But anyways, yeah, we'll go full elf. We're basically just using Yasmin's convert to green to feed your green weapon. If you don't have Deathbringer, just use War and Peace. Let's have Deathbringer here because it covers a little bit more color. And of course, if you're going into the brown route, you can also feed brown into it. However, just using War and Peace is fine, which also ends up feeding brown, so it ends up working out both ways actually. But yeah, if you don't have that, just use War and Peace and you'll be fine. This weapon right here. Wait, why is that coming up? There's that many with War in it? But if you don't have that, just use War and Peace and you're good to go. And just use War and Peace in that and it will do the same thing. But if you have Deathbringer, it does do a little bit more damage as far as its damage range. Requires a little bit more mana, but you have a lot of ways to gain mana with the team. As far as Underspire is concerned, you do have to use a Forest of Thorns team. And this one does allow you to use things that aren't just elves. So for this, we're using a... actually, I think that we showed this exact same team for the Flower Dragon video. We covered a video last week going over all the teams for every Flower Dragon, including, obviously, the 6-colored Flower Dragon. But the one that we showed for green, yeah, it was actually just this team. It ends up working out really well. You don't have to do it with this, of course. You could just do it with whatever your best green damage source is from this kingdom. You can end up placing here. Go Forest, Troll, Elemental Bow, whatever your best green damage source is from Forest of Thorns, and then Daughter of Yasmin. Daughter of Yasmin for its empowering the green and Greenstorm. Forest Troll, double the green +3. as well as the tank pretty well. Elemental Bow ends up feeding a lot of blue and green to everything else in your team, most notably Forest Troll, so you can kind of get that rolling again. And then whatever your best green damage source is, with the new Flower Dragon being likely your best overall option, as there's a really high amount of damage it can end up doing, and potentially even getting 4 times Faerie Fire onto the opposing team as well, which of course would help speed out the battle quite a bit. And as far as the lower rarity for Underspire, we're using the Emerald Giant to go and do a bunch of mana accumulation off his ability. Using this as a standard explodey weapon for backup resummon and just to go gain a bunch of status effects as it does it to all Forest of Thorns troops, which of course is your entire team. And if you don't have this weapon, it is available in Soulforge this week, so really easy to go get. We then have Green Seer just doing a standard convert to green convert, ends up doing some entangle too if you end up needing it, which could kind of be helpful to make sure that this guy ends up triggering his ability a little bit better, since with the score reduction and everything else, you could just keep getting those green giant gems whenever they hit you with Skull. And of course, just a nice range just for a little bit of standard damage. And yeah, that's pretty much all the teams, other than, you know, everything you would use for whatever you want to use for the Vault weekend in order to quick kill explore or PvP or whatever you want to farm your gnomes off of this weekend. Beyond that, other things worth mentioning. Tuesday, we have ourselves the faction event for Primal Rift, as we mentioned, green-purple restriction. Wednesday, we have, actually, I'm not sure. Wednesday, we have, I think this is one of the old pets, isn't this? Oh, no, I think this is for the legend. I think this is for the legend that gives 50% mana start to all elves and does a bunch of damage to them, which honestly isn't that bad. He's a decent troop. I believe that's the one that that dog is for. So if you never got him upgraded from before, that's actually not too bad of a bonus. Thursday, we have Archer class event. It's used occasionally. Has insta-kill on its skull, has 50% mana start, has Green Storm, which is pretty nice, and of course has synergy with Forest of Thorns, and 10% extra stats this week. And Friday, of course, Vault event weekend, so great time to be farming up loot. This is also the first Vault event weekend since the new Flower Dragon, so if you need to go get a bunch of, excuse me, if you need to go get a bunch of Dragonite, this will be the first time since they have been released that you can go and do so. Of course, Vault Keys themselves do not have Dragonite in it, but Dragonite Gnomes are 3 times more common during Vault event weekends, as are all Gnomes. But also, you can go and use your daily, or all the gems that you're getting from Vault Keys and everything else, you can go and use them on the daily Dragonite, which you can get underneath dungeons and end up getting your Dragonite right over here. And yeah, for 300 gems, you can convert it to 60 Dragonite at a rate of basically 5 gems per every single Dragonite. And if you've reached your daily cap of 1 per day, you can end up getting them through merchant offers from just doing Explore. And you can synergize those together, of course, doing Vault Event Weekend while farming Explore, while buying all the Dragonite that you get from the merchants, which will give you even more. Plus, you get some for free from the Angels as well occasionally, as well as Dragonite Gnomes. So, great time to be farming Dragonite this weekend, and 2 weekends from now when we have the other Vault Weekend for Easter weekend. Beyond that, Soulforge. I don't believe we went over you yet. As far as Soulforge, there's one thing kind of worth mentioning here as far as crafting mythics, and that is Archdiva. It's a very interesting mythic to always keep an eye on. Basically, the gimmick of this guy is he gets to choose an ally, gives it 1 billion stats other than magic, and then fills their entire mana pool. This, of course, is really good with high mana cost troops. Of course, most notably, recently, the Flower Dragon. But what this actually works best with are high mana cost troops that are really skull-oriented. I would say the best one in the current state of the game is Lord of Slaughter, as he benefits a lot from having higher attack and extra durability, while also having a decently high mana cost of 27. But basically, any mythic or anything of absurdly high mana cost in the game, he could always fill for only 20. Of course, this does end your turn, and you can only use it once per battle, but there are a lot of situations where you end up casting it, or, you know, you end up casting your really high mana cost troop, you then end up filling it up with this, and just double cast them into a win. And also, once he has done his ability, he still gets the Barrier Bless every extra turn, which honestly isn't that bad. Bless to make sure you don't get hit by status effects, Barrier to make sure you live, so even after he's done his one-time cast, he can still be pretty effective. But very niche as far as when you bring him out, but definitely always something to keep an eye out on, as anything with a super high mana cost he can occasionally find his way into. Like you even build him with Stellarix, you build him with Flower Dragon, you build him into Lord of Slaughter. Pretty much anything that ever has like a 25 higher or 25 or higher mana cost can go pretty well with, particularly skull-oriented troops in that category, as they benefit a lot more from the stat gains that he has. That's one of the only ones really to worth mentioning here. As far as weapons, I would say Elemental Bow is probably the main thing. There are a few other ones that you might want to pick up if you need it for your team, like for the budget team. I think we showed wherever that brown-blue explodey weapon is. Somewhere's in here. It's definitely available. Where is it? Brown-blue explodey weapon from Forest of Thorns. I know you're in here. There it is. Thorn or Gods. So you might want to go for either this, which is mostly only good for this week, but if you're doing low rarity builds, this is probably one of your best low rarity build weapons, since it ends up having a lot of mana accumulation, has resummon, everything like that. But the overall best weapon is definitely Elemental Bow. 4 times Elemental teams love this a lot. One of the main things that make this so good with 4 times elemental teams, aside from all the general benefits that you would get from something like this, for one, it has green storm, which is pretty nice. Storm into its own color. Doesn't feed back into the bow, which would be even more broken. But what it does end up doing is it creates blue and green. This is pretty noteworthy relative to what it covers, because it covers yellow, purple, and Mirage Queen, which is the troop that gives 50% mana start to all elementals, is a red-blue, which has no color confliction at all, so you get to cover 4 colors between the 2 of them. However, it also utilizes blue and green. It uses blue directly because it needs to feed mana to it, but it uses green because Mirage Queen gets to convert all greens into Doom Skulls, which means you get a really, really good setup where you fill it up with full mana and give it directly a really good skull spam that you can end up doing. So you can get a lot of value from it. And that's just those 2 troops. It's not even counting the other 2 troops that are elemental that you put on your team. And of course, with things like the new Flower Dragon, it is elemental. So if you do go down that route, you can end up synergizing that with that. Has really good synergy with its own kingdom because there's a lot of elementals and Forest of Thorns. While it is a bit of a mixed bag as far as like Fae, Elf, and Elemental, there is a decent amount of elemental to be able to build a 4 times elemental team out of the kingdom, with the new Flower Dragon of the green variety being one of the main components that you can end up doing for it, but of course still plenty of other things too from before that you can still do green synergy with. But overall, I would say probably the main thing you want to get, as it has use case beyond just this week, where something like this explodey weapon, while really good for early game and just in general for a lot of the events this week, it does fall off after this week, where something like Elemental Bow, you will pretty much always be building into various elemental teams over just the course of time. So definitely worth having for sure. So if you're going to get any one thing from Soulforge, definitely make sure to get Elemental Bow this week. As far as other things, it is worth mentioning once more time that this is the final week to go and complete out the campaign. We'll be going over the new Mythic that comes out from it tonight on stream at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we always do. And yeah, I'll be messing around with that. Unfortunately, it's pretty bad, though. It is pretty bad. It deals a bunch of scatter damage boosted by decaying gems at a ratio nowhere near enough to be viable, and it converts 6 of those green gems into decaying gems. Not even all of them, just 6. And on top of that, it only creates 1 decaying gem every single turn, which is a brown gem. At least it feeds back into itself, but it's on the long track record of mythics that we've been getting from season passes that have just been so bad. Luckily, the mythic we're getting this Friday that everyone can get access to really easily is really, really good. But yeah, campaign mythics, they've been on a downhill of a spiral for a while now. They have all been so bad. I can't even remember the last one. I feel like it's been like 7 or 8 events since we had like a really, really good one. But anyways, other than that, ending this week, mentioned everything here. Guild event, we already mentioned Tower of Doom, yellow restriction, new weapon type. Make sure to spend 500 gems so you end up getting double score whenever you use the weapon on the Doom fights. Technically, you only have to do it on the Doom fights, but it is worth using it on absolutely all of them. Beyond that, event key drop table. I was testing this earlier, and there's actually a lot of things that are not in the drop table. So let's go over a couple of them. First, that's the things that's not in drop table. Array. This is basically a discontinued troop at the moment. It was an old Guild War troop from back in the day, but new Guild Wars did not end up adding it. I believe their current plan is to add it to the seal drop table, or, you know, the guild chests. However, they currently are not in that drop table, so as it currently stands, they are still a discontinued troop, so there is no way to get Array in the current state of the game. Beyond that, this troop is from the most recent Bounty Hunter. If you did not end up getting it from the last Bounty Hunter, you will be able to get it in standard drop tables in probably about a month from now. This was pretty recent. This was like, what, last Friday, last weekend? So pretty recent, so you will be able to get that in about 6 weeks after the event or so. You'll be able to get it in all the standard drop tables, but as it currently stands, I was double checking, you cannot currently get it in the event key drop table. Beyond that, all 5 troops from the Primal Rift are not in the event key drop table, so don't try going for it. Beyond all those, the Queen of Swords is not in drop table. This is only from the current paid season pass. However, it will be in the drop table in about a couple months in the vault key drop table. However, as it currently stands, you cannot vault key for it and won't be able to for a little bit of time. The Elemental Sentinel of the green variety is not a drop table. This is only from doing Underspire and getting very lucky off the dead end rooms. The Decaying Queen is not a drop table. This is currently money locked from the current campaign, and once again will be available in about a couple months from now from things like the Diamond drop table and just standard drop tables. Overall, you're not missing out on much. It's really bad. Immortal Virago is also not a drop table. This, of course, is from Burning Marks from doing PvP. And Gladius is also not a drop table. It is from the new Flower Dragons that are in Soulforge at 600 Dragonite per egg. Gosh, we need like a whole dictionary of exceptions now every single time we ever explain what is not and is in event key drop tables, because honestly the list that isn't is almost longer than the list that is. So if you were to open event keys this week, why would you? You might want to open some. There are a few pickups of the Legend of Rarity and lower that are worth picking up. The most noteworthy one that you don't want to leave this week without if you don't currently have it is King Avalon. He has 50% mana start to all elves, and if you're ever doing any elf restriction, you basically have to have him on your team. Obviously it's not required, but any kind of time this does come up in the future, you 100% want to make sure you have him on your team. 50% mana start to all elves, or 50% mana start to pretty much any category. Always really good, and his ability is actually not bad. While it is forced to end his turn, it does do AoE damage. It does have resummon, that's not too bad, so overall, pretty decent. Just no follow-up on his ability. Sylvain Mora, very niche, but decent. Ends up entangling the first enemy whenever you take an extra turn. This is only one entangle, however, it is entangling the most important enemy. This is really good with things that are skull spam oriented, particularly with the troop that does triple damage to entangled enemies, as this guarantees that you'll always be able to go and re-entangle on the first slot. And whenever you do skull spam with this does retroactively target the next enemy. So let's say you kill the first enemy with a 4 times, 5 times, or even just a big skull spam that hits them like 5 times over. The extra turn from that will apply the entangle to the next enemy, not to the enemy you just killed. So this will end up reapplying it to the next enemy in line, so when you do get more skulls onto it, it will end up automatically doing it to them, so you don't need to worry about re-entangling. So overall, yeah, works out really nicely. It's mostly only used in the triple damage skull spam teams with entangle, but still really good overall useful entangler. It's just compared to elementals, you don't tend to run it too often if you just want entangle, but it's really good if you're utilizing it in a triple damage entangle skull spam team. Beyond that, Forest Troll, worth mentioning in the sense that pretty good to be able to double green. The most noteworthy thing with this is actually double Truffle and double Beatrix. They benefit a lot because they both create green and brown. Brown feeds back into him, doubling green ends up feeding into everything, and you just kind of keep looping it back and forth for the extra turns. Particularly useful with Truffle as you basically do an actual infinite loop. Not even like pseudo infinite loop, like an actual infinite that never ends. It's a little bit slow, but once you get it going, Forest Troll and the double Truffle into Hero with Greenstorm, or anything with Greenstorm, is 100% consistent infinite loop once you get it going. Biggest issue with it is its damage source, or damage rate, as well as trying to get the team rolling takes a little while, so it's normally too slow to be really viable, but it is infinite. Like, it just keeps going forever as long as you're not frozen or anything else, so it ends up working out pretty nicely, but it is generally too slow to bother with a lot of times. And beyond that, if you want to get your Rowan, if you've been using this as like a low damage quick kill kind of option, if you haven't been going down like the Atlanta route or anything else, still really good for low damage quick kill, especially if you want to end up utilizing it for the Vault event weekend this weekend. Of course, a really great option for that. And yeah, if you don't already have her maxed, you can end up doing so pretty easily this week if you don't want to bother using the orbs for maxing her out, or even teams that end up utilizing 2 of her if you want to go down that route as well, where you don't end up necessarily boosting her, but you do 2 casts of her to end up wiping out the opposing team. Also ends up working out pretty well. But yeah, just a few low rarity stuff here, with King Avalon being the most noteworthy one. Nothing under the Mythic category really worth mentioning, as yeah, all 3 of them are pretty bad, and everything else is obtained through other means at the current state of the game. But overall, I would say pretty skippable, with a few utilities that you might want to pick up if you don't already have them. Beyond all that, anything else to mention other than the current new troop? I don't believe so. So, of course, the new troop. Actually, let's go there today. Yeah, we'll get there this way. So, as far as new troop, they actually did a triple effect this time instead of double. It gives a bunch of life to an ally boosted by yellow gems, and if they use yellow mana, it'll triple the effect. Biggest issue with this is why? All it's doing is just giving a ton of life to a yellow ally. There is one yellow troop, Bull Taurus, I believe his name is, that boost ratios based on life and is also a yellow troop. But beyond that one singular troop, I can't really think of much of a use case for this thing. It is just simply give 1 billion life to a single ally and then end your turn. But I don't really foresee that being worthwhile. She doesn't have any mana start. She does have Yellow Storm into Air Link, but I don't really see that being enough to really justify it. 14 mana cost for just ending your turn, just giving some life to an ally. Not that great. No follow-up, no real anything else other than just this huge amount of life to a yellow ally. Unless we get something absurdly meta in the future that ends up utilizing yellow boost ratio as a mythic. But even then, you know what you'd end up using instead? Like, yeah, she does exist, but you would just end up using, what's his name instead? Like, he's literally in Soulforge right now. Like, obviously it's a lower rarity option for it. But if such a situation was to occur, you would just use him. He already does a bunch of life and a bunch of extra stats on top of that. It gives all the mana, so if they have like a 24 mana cost or higher or anything like that, you already get all the mana as well. So, I don't know, I just don't really see a use case for her. I guess to some degree she's a lower rarity version of that, but how often are you really going for something like that? Because aside from Bold Taurus, nothing comes to mind off the top of my head as far as something that could really utilize it well. He ends up dealing a bunch of scatter damage boosted by his life at a 1-to-1 ratio. Used to be 1-to-2, but 1-to-1 has made him a little bit more viable, but not by much. And yeah, you can give it a bunch of life, but I don't know, it just feels like you're investing a lot of your team just to make Bold Taurus like half as decent as Rowan with just by default. Like a completely normal Rowan with no buff basically does what a double trip combo already is doing with Bold Taurus, so no real point in building around that for the most part unless we get like a really good option for that in the future. But as it currently stands, I just don't see a use case for it in the current state of game, not with no follow-up or anything like that. But anyways, guys, that'll wrap it up for now. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for watching.